What is going on, guys? My name is Bill Matthews from the BassinBill 96 YouTube channel, and in today's video we are going to be doing an ultimate fishing rig roundup. I've got all sorts of gear in front of me. We're going to be breaking down the top 5 best fishing rigs that you need to know if you guys are just getting into bass fishing. If you guys are pros, these are the 5 that I probably use more than any other fishing rig. We're going to break down exactly how to rig these things up step by step, and I'm going to tell you guys exactly where I like to fish these baits as well. So stick around, stay tuned, it's going to be a good one. The first bait that I'm going to show you guys how to rig up is the Wacky Worm. We're going to go in order from the easiest baits to rig to the more complex ones. And the Wacky Worm, not only is it one of the easiest baits to fish, but as you guys can tell, it's pretty simple and it's going to be one of the easiest baits to rig as well. And all you need is a little finesse hook. We just got a little size 1 zone lock right there. You need the Senko of your choice. We got a little Carl's Bait and Tackle 4-inch Senko. And you take your hook, you take your Senko, and all you're going to do is rig this thing right in the middle. And you got yourself a perfectly rigged Wacky Worm. And like I said, we're going to talk about a little bit how to fish these as well. And really all you're doing with a Wacky Worm is you're casting this bait out and you're letting it fall. A lot of these fish are going to eat this bait in the fall. You do not want to give it too much action. You're going to want to cast it out, let it fall, let it sink for about 5 to 10 seconds depending on how deep you're fishing. Give it a couple pops up, let it fall again. And a lot of those bites are going to come when that bait is falling. So definitely do not overwork this bait. Fish it around docks, fish it around grass, and fish it very, very slow. And if you're just getting into fishing, this is a bait you're definitely going to want to throw. So that's the Wacky Worm. Let's jump into the next bait. The second bait that we're going to rig up today is the Ned Rig. So a little bit harder to rig than the Wacky Worm, but still, as you can tell, not a lot to this bait right here. It's been sweeping the nation. A lot of people have been catching big bass on this. Caught some of the biggest smallmouth in my life. Actually, my personal best smallmouth came on this little turn rig right here. And we got a little 𝗙𝗃𝗃 deadbolt head. So you need the Ned Rig head of your choice, and then you need the Ned Rig bait of your choice. We just have the little Z-Man finesse TRD right here. And all you need to do is you need to stick this hook right in the center of your Ned Rig bait, and you're just going to kind of guide it. Try to keep that hook point right in the center. If it gets off center at all, your bait's going to get curved up and you're not going to catch as many fish, and that's just a fact. But keep it right in the center and pop that hook out, and you've got yourself a perfectly rigged Ned Rig bait. And you want to try to keep it as straight as humanly possible. It can be a little bit difficult to keep that bait on there straight if you're using that Stretch X plastic that 𝗙𝗃𝗃 makes for their 𝗙𝗃𝗃𝗃 bugs, or if you're using these original Z-Man TRDs. But if you get it on there perfectly straight, you're gonna catch a ton of bass. And I like throwing Ned Rigs on deep breaks, around grass. I like throwing these over rock piles, and I also like skipping these around docks as well. But all you do is you cast it out there and you're dragging this really, really slow on the bottom most of the time. You can give it little hops, and Z-Man even says you could reel this in, you could swim it a little bit, because it's going to mimic a little bait fish, but most of the time I'm dragging this on the bottom, keeping it really, really slow, and you're going to catch a ton of smallmouth bass. But that is bait number 2. Let's jump into the next bait. The third bait that I'm going to show you guys how to rig up is the Texas rig. And like I said, we started out with the easiest baits. We're working our way into the more complex rigs. And this one right here has got 4 components to it. So let me just break down what you guys need if you guys want to tie a Texas rig up. The very first thing that you're going to need is a solid hook. We got a 4-aught Googan Squad hammer hook made by 𝗙𝗃𝗃 right there. And then you're going to need a bullet weight. I like to go with tungsten. It's a little bit more compact and you're going to get a little bit more sensitivity, but any lead or tungsten bullet weight will do. This one's about 1/4 ounce. This one's going to be optional, but I like to use bobber stops whenever I'm fishing heavy cover, if I'm flipping into laydowns, if I'm flipping under docks, anytime when I need that bait to be nice and compact, I like to use a bobber stop. And then finally, you need the soft plastic bait of choice, which right here we have got the Vile Craw made by Biospawn. So those are the 4 things that you need, and this one I'm going to show you guys how to rig up because it's a little bit more complex, like I said. So we've got our line right here. Most of the times when I'm fishing a Texas rig, I'm probably fishing it at anywhere between 12 and 20 pound test, depending on how thick the cover is. If you're flipping this into super thick grass, you're probably going to be throwing it on braid, but that's going to be more of a flipping rig. You're going to have a whole different hook and kind of a different thing. But right now we got some 12 pound tests right here, and the first thing that you need to do is you need to take your bobber stop right here, and as you guys can see, if this camera will focus, is it's got this tiny little loop that you're going to stick the line through. And once you stick that line through, all you're going to do is you're going to pull that bobber stop onto your main line, just like that. And it pulls off of that little contraption that it's on, and you got your bobber stop and you slip it up your line. So right there, that's going to peg your bait and keep that bait nice and compact for you. But we got the bobber stop on, and the next thing that you need to do is just take your bullet weight and slide it right up that line, up flush with that bobber stop. Slide that weight up the line, pretty self-explanatory. And then the very last thing that we have to do is tie the hook on. So there we go. Line is tied. We're going to cut off this excess right here. Okay, and then I guess the final step would actually be rigging the soft plastic up. We got our little vial craw, and all you're gonna do is you're gonna take that hook point, poke it through the bait, and you wanna get it in there about 1/4 inch or so, and then leave it hang just like that. And then all you're gonna do is pop it through the side of the soft plastic, and you're gonna snake this up that hook. Once you get to this bend, you're gonna wanna follow it around and twist that bait. So now it's looking just like this, dangling over that hook point. And then all we're gonna do is we're gonna pop this through, see where it lines up, and you've got yourself a perfectly rigged Texas rig. We stick it right back in there so we make sure that this bait is weedless and nothing is gonna get hung up on the hook at all. So a lot of times I'm fishing this with the bobber stop on there. We're gonna slide that up nice and flush with that weight. So you've got a perfectly rigged up Texas rig, and I like fishing this thing around heavy cover because as you guys can see, this thing can go through pretty much anything, the thickest vegetation. Underneath the dock, it's not gonna get hung up. You could flip this up into trees, you're not gonna get hung up. And I love fishing this thing around heavy cover and just fishing it slow on the bottom, hopping it through, you know, branches, docks, all that good stuff. This is an awesome bait if you're fishing really, really thick stuff. So that's bait number 3. Let's jump into the next rig. The 4th bait that I'm gonna show you guys how to rig up is a drop shot rig, and you only need 3 things for this bait right here. First things first, you need your hook, which we have a little size 1 zone lock finesse hook. Any tiny little finesse hook will do for you. The second thing that you need is a drop shot weight. I really like going with these little cylinder style ones, but a lot of guys swear by those ball ones for fishing rocks. Honestly, this is the best all around for me. I do really well on rocks, but also this comes through the grass a little bit better for me. And then finally, you need the drop shot bait of choice, which right here we have the Gungan Squad Dragon Drop. And so that's all you need, and I'm gonna show you guys how to tie this bait up. When it comes to tying up a drop shot rig, pretty much any of the rigs that we talked about today, you could use whatever knot that you want, but the drop shot rig, you're gonna wanna use the Palomar knot, and I'm gonna show you guys why here in just a second. If you want to look up a tutorial on how to tie the Palomar knot, I know that the 𝗦cie𝗰𝗶𝗹 channel has one because I did one for their channel last year. Just like so, we're going to pull that knot tight, and we are using 12-pound tests on here. Usually when I'm throwing a drop shot, you're looking at 6 to 8-pound tests. It's more of a finesse tactic. Probably going to be throwing this thing on a spinning rod, but for demonstration purposes, we've got some 12-pound tests, and we just tied our Palomar knot up, and so this is what we're left with right here. And as you guys can see, I know it's a little bit hard, it's kind of a tiny little hook right there, but right now the hook is upside down, and that is not what you want to see on a drop shot rig. But the importance of the Palomar knot is you have this big excess strip right here, and what we're going to do is we're going to take the end of that little tag end right there, we are going to stick it through the top of the hook once again. So we already tied this up, but we're going to stick that tag end through the top of the hook, and what that is going to do is it's going to make that hook stick straight out, and it's going to make it face right side up. So like I said, this line's a little bit thick. It's not doing exactly what I want it to, but as you guys can see, the hook was upside down before, now it is right side up. If you're using 8-pound test too, this is going to kind of shoot up and stick that hook straight out, which is what you want to see. It's going to definitely increase your hookup ratio, but Palomar knot, super key. We've got our hook rigged up right there, and then last thing that you need to do is just slip this little weight on there, and you've got yourself a fully rigged drop shot rig. I like to change my leaders up depending on how deep I'm fishing and how tall the grass is. Usually if you have like a foot of grass, you want to make sure that your leader is just long enough to keep that bait above the grass, and that's kind of the rule of thumb that I go by. But that's your drop shot rig right there. We've got about a 1-foot leader to our hook, and all you do is just nose hook the bait too. Nothing too crazy on this. All we're going to do is just stick it right through the nose, and you've got yourself a perfectly rigged drop shot bait. But this is obviously awesome for fishing deep if you guys have some deep structure, if you're fishing a grass line, and really just an awesome deep water tactic. Really not too much I could say about it. You're not flipping this thing up at cover usually, but whenever you're fishing out deep, if there's fish that are suspended just above the bottom, the drop shot can be a super deadly bait. But that is rig number 4. We are going to jump into the final rig of the day, the most complex one, the one that you guys have all been waiting for. The 5th and final bait that I'm going to show you guys how to rig up today is the Carolina rig, and this is one of those old school tactics that not a lot of guys use anymore, but can be one of the most effective baits for deep water and for really feeling out structure when you're fishing out deep too, because you got this giant weight and you're going to really be able to feel the bottom, you're going to be able to feel those bites, and awesome for covering water too. It's kind of a slow tactic that you're also power fishing at the same time, but this can be a little bit complex to tie up. Like I said, we kind of started with those easy ones, we've worked into the hardest ones to rig up, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 components really to tying this bait up. We've got the soft plastic of our choice, and we've got the hook, which this is still just rigged up from that Texas rig. We got a little bead, and you could use a glass one or a plastic one. They have slightly different sounds. You need a little double swivel right there. And then you need your big old weight. And right here, we just have a lead one. You could use lead or tungsten, like I said. And then you need a lead or two for tying up this Carolina rig. So 6 things, and let me show you guys how to rig this up because this one can be a bit of a doozy. The very first thing that I like to do when I'm tying up a Carolina rig is I take my little swivel right there and I like to just tie a Polymer knot to that straight away and have this ready to go. Gonna clip off that little tag end, and this is what it's gonna look like. So this is gonna be our leader. It's attached to nothing, and then this side is our little swivel right there. That's the first step to tying up a Carolina rig. The next step is we're gonna take our main line. So this is what's gonna be attached to the end of your rod. Right here, we just have it attached to a reel, but this is the main line that you're gonna be casting around. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our big old lead weight, and we're just gonna slide it up that main line. So that's going to be free floating on the end of your rod, that big old weight. And then we're going to take our bead. So we just have a little red plastic bead. We're going to slide that on the main line as well, right behind that big old weight. And the reason that you want to use this bead is, one, when this big old weight is dropping down, it's going to create some noise, a little bit of a clacking noise. That's why that little glass bead could be a little bit better even than this plastic one, but that's number one. And also this is going to protect your knot here in a second too, but this is what it looks like. This is our main line. We got our big weight, and then we've got our bead right there. And so what we're going to do next is we've got our leader line that we tied up with our swivel on the end there, and we're going to tie our main line up to this leader line with another Palomar knot. Cut the tag end off, and this is what we're left with. We got our leader line, which this can be anywhere between 1 foot and like 4 feet. You could have an absolutely giant leader when you're throwing a Carolina rig, just depending on what you're going for. Right here we probably have about 2-3 foot. And then on top of our swivel, we have got our bead and we've got our weight. So like I said, that bead right there, it's going to help protect that knot, and also it's going to create some noise on the bottom as you're dragging this thing around. But we're almost done with this. The very last step is all we're going to do is tie up our hook. And like I said, you're pretty much just going to keep this thing Texas rigged. This is the exact same thing that we used earlier on in the video. And we're just going to tie this up and we're going to be pretty much set. But I'll show you guys the finished product here in just a second. Cut the very last tag end, and we have got ourselves a perfectly rigged Carolina rig. And this is by far the most complex bait to rig up. It could be kind of a hassle when you're in a tournament if you snap off or something. Usually what I like to do is I like to have a few of these leaders tied up ready to go. And it makes it just so much easier when you're on the water. But I made it a little bit shorter so you guys can kind of see the full rig here. But usually I'm throwing about a 2.5 foot leader. Right here we probably have about a 1.5, but little bead, big old weight, and we got our little Texas rigged vial craw in the back there. Awesome, awesome bait for probing deep water. You can really feel those rocks. You can pretty much feel any single thing that you crawl over on the bottom, and you're gonna get a lot of big bites on a Carolina rig. But that is the ultimate fishing rig roundup. 5 solid rigs that pretty much every single one of those is gonna have a time and a place where they're gonna shine, they're gonna excel. And you definitely need to know how to tie each and every one of the rigs that I just told you guys. So hopefully you guys soak some stuff up. If you guys have not tied up some of these rigs before, definitely give it a go next season. And thank you guys so much for watching. I will catch you guys in the next one.